All right, Pitmasters, we're going to sit down today with the fellows from the Smoke Sheet. We got Sean Ludwig and Ryan Cooper. Say hello, guys.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
So tell us.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Hey, thanks for coming on. I'm a big fan of what you guys do. The Smoke, like I said, the Smoke Sheet is my favorite thing to read when I wake up. It's cool to see what's going on in the world as far as like other, that you guys talk about podcasts and all sorts of things to read and things that I missed out on. And it's super cool, but we'll get to all that later. Let's talk about you guys for a second. Ryan, you are part of the Barbecue Tourist. Tell us how that got started.
I started that about 2.5, almost 3 years ago. And basically I'm from Kansas City originally. And I first started out, I wanted to create some sort of app that would show where all the barbecue restaurants were in Kansas City. And so I started with that and had so much fun with it. I decided, well, maybe I ought to do this for, all the big barbecue capitals. And so shortly after I launched Barbecue Tourist, I took a trip down to Texas and hit a bunch of the classical joints down there. And Barbecue Tourist was born. I was hooked after that. I was like, oh man, I'm going to hit every place I can. I'm going to travel this whole country and eat barbecue and meet all these awesome people. So that's really how it got started.
Nice. So is it like you're eating barbecue one day and you're like, I need to tell the world about this spot right now? Is that kind of what triggered it? Or
it was kind of, for the Kansas City part, it was just a little bit of a fun, like, hey, where I'm from, barbecue's famous. So and I had started getting into smoking meat and stuff in my backyard. I just want to kind of explore the place where I was from at first. And then once I went to Texas, I was hooked. I was like, man, this is, because the cool thing about Texas was it was somewhat familiar, but still pretty radically different from Kansas City barbecue in every regard. Like not only the food, but like just the atmosphere and the people and the culture and everything. It was just really totally different. And after that, I was like, man, I got to check out what it's like all over the country. And so that's why Barbecue Tourist was really born, was for that idea.
How many places do you think you've gone across the United States? Do you have like a map with some like thumbtacks in it, like old school? Or
I used to. In fact, that's kind of funny that you say that. I'm actually a geographer as a profession. I make maps for a living, and that's kind of how it started. Was making maps of barbecue restaurants and their locations. So I started that way, and then it got out of hand to where I couldn't keep up with that. And so no, I don't have that anymore. I can't even guess like how many places I've hit. It's hundreds, if not thousands, probably hundreds, but it's a ton. I know Sean and we went to, we went to Memphis and hit, 15 barbecue spots in 3 days or something. So, I mean, it's easy when you get on these barbecue road trips, it's easy to knock out like, a dozen spots and maybe hit 5 spots a day. So I've hit a lot of barbecue places.
So I'm just curious, how do you do it? Do you just walk in and say, give me the platter? Give me the meats? Like when you're talking hitting 15 places in 3 days, that is a lot of food.
Yeah. Well, so what I've learned to do, when I first went to Texas, it was crazy because I went there and I was like ordering the platter and I was sitting down and I was trying to eat all that. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Like I was totally tired of brisket after the third day because I was really like trying to have the entire meal as you would. So since then I've gotten better at getting a strategy where I'll have a Yeti. I take a lot of leftovers. The other thing to do is to either go with friends or meet people there and kind of share a meal. And that way you can try a little bit of a lot of different things. If I don't have that luxury, I have a strategy where I'll go in and I'll kind of ask the person at the counter what they recommend, especially with side dishes. You know, I have my own particular meats that I always want to try, but if it's a side dish, I'll ask them, what do you recommend? Or if a place is known for a particular dish, I'll order, you know, what they're known for rather than just getting brisket everywhere or whatever.
Do you have a cure for the meat sweats yet? Have you busted that out? I mean, no.
No,
you just suffer through them like the rest of us.
Yeah. And people always joke with me. They're like, so what do you do after you go on a 2-week road trip to Texas or whatever, and you hit all these spots? And I do, I get tired of barbecue. After that, I'll do salad, veggies for a long time. And then it slowly, the bug kind of hits me again. And I'm like, all right, I need some barbecue.
Mm-hmm. It's like sushi. You go and eat a bunch of it and you're like, I'm never doing that again. The next day, you're like, hell yeah, I'm going to get some more of that.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
And
it doesn't take very long before I want some barbecue again. So
that's awesome.
Maybe a day or two.
Can I interject with a potential cure for the meat sweats?
Yes, please.
Bring it.
So,
please.
As I've eaten a lot of barbecue myself, one, I mean, I'm sure all of you have had a really nice glass of bourbon after a meal of barbecue. I think that can help a little bit. It's not going to give you like a complete cure, but it might make you feel a little bit better. Another weird one is port wine, actually, which is commonly kind of like a thing you'd eat after a large meal anyway. But I think a little bit of port wine after a heavy barbecue meal or multiple heavy barbecue meals can help with a little bit with the digestion. So that's an interesting one to give a shot sometime.
That's awesome. I love me some port wine.
Port wine with some chocolate. Boom, done. They pair well.
You just got fancy.
Yeah, I did.
That's way too fancy for me. That's bougie, man.
You didn't know I had that in me. Yeah.
Wow. You went from Wu-Tang to port and chocolate.
Yes, sir.
Good for you. All right. Hey, Sean, let's hit you then. You're a transplant to New York City. How did that all come about, your whole barbecue journey?
It's actually funny. So yeah, both Ryan and I are originally from the Kansas City area, but we ended up in two very different places. I moved to New York about 11 years ago, and it's a little more than 11 years now. And when I moved here, I didn't know half of what I know about barbecue now, but it really came about being from Kansas City, really loving barbecue, coming to New York, and then seeking it out and wanting to know, where can I get good barbecue? And I didn't feel like there was very little coverage of a barbecue outside of the Big Apple Barbecue Block Party, which was an annual gathering, probably was one of the biggest barbecue events that's held annually. It's no longer held, unfortunately, not just because of COVID, but just because of, the event kind of ran its course, so to speak. But barbecue here is a very different thing than what you'd find in a lot of cities. It's kind of got like a greatest hits feel to it. A lot of different types of barbecue are found here, and surprisingly good. You can find some surprisingly very good barbecue. I know people will be like, New York, they don't know anything about barbecue. But actually, the thing about New York and how much culinary talent is concentrated in New York, or at least was until COVID, unfortunately has kind of hurt our restaurant scene. But we have just such incredible talent here that if you think that, New York can usually compete in almost any kind of cuisine if they attract really good people, right? So, there's some really amazing stuff here. I just started covering and writing about the barbecue scene about 5 years ago, kind of as a hobby. And it's grown from a hobby to, now doing the NYC BBC Weekly newsletter, where I kind of write about what's going on locally. And then into kind of grew that into the national obsession by working with Ryan on the smoke sheet and using the knowledge that I've acquired here, all my trips to Kansas City. And then when I'm around the country, which not as much as Ryan, don't get me wrong, Ryan's got me beat on a number of barbecue places. But whenever I travel around the country, I also try to go hit up as many barbecue places as I have time for. I'm wearing a Sam Jones shirt on right now,
nice.
Which was actually had a really great time going. I hit up both his restaurants. I went to Skylight Inn and then down the street to Sam Jones Barbecue. But yeah, love barbecue, and it's been a real fun journey to go from kind of a hobby to something a lot bigger.
Nice. So I have a question. It's kind of putting it on the spot. I should say this. Is there better barbecue in certain boroughs?
Yeah. I think that almost by any measure, if you were to look at the 5 boroughs, you would find the highest concentration of what you would sort of call as sort of classic Southern barbecue. That is, that you'd find in Texas, maybe some Kansas City. Most of that you'd find in Brooklyn. And then you do still have some particularly good ones in Queens and in Manhattan. You've got 1 or 2 in the Bronx, and you've got 1 or 2 in Staten Island.
Oh, cool. Interesting. I've never been to I slept in JFK. Does that count?
Yeah, it does. You've been there. He's been there, but hasn't experienced it.
Oh yeah.
I always say if you were just in the airport, you really didn't go there, because I've been to a lot of airports, but I don't count that as going to the place. So I don't know. You got to come back.
Let's just touch on that for a second. There are people who say they've been to Milwaukee, and I'm like, what part? Oh, the airport. I'm like, you haven't been to damn Milwaukee.
What if they had a bear in Milwaukee though?
No,
at the airport. Does that count?
No.
Nah.
Sorry, guys.
If you didn't leave the airport, I don't say you didn't go there. I went on an international flight, and I stopped at the Dublin airport. I didn't go to Dublin, come on. Right. It was a transfer.
I went to JFK, and I had the steak shake by Danny Meyer. Does that count? No, it does not, lady.
I mean, I'm glad that you had a Shake Shack experience, even though it wasn't,
Yeah. Whatever. All right.
Anyways,
so you guys are standing in line at Snow's Barbecue, and you guys just serendipitously started talking. That's a word, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Somewhat.
Started chatting about whatever. How did the smoke sheet? Where was that born?
All right, Ryan, you want to take this one? That famous story of ours?
Yeah. I mean, so it literally, I showed up, and this was, my first trip to Texas. I'd never been down there, never experienced anything. And I thought I would just go to Snow's Barbecue, and then I'd hit a bunch of other spots that same day. Little did I know that, you show up at 8 a.m. because you wait for hours and hours to get the famous barbecue. So I showed up at 8 o'clock, and I'm standing in line, and guy in front of me starts talking to his friend about barbecue. And it was like, man, this guy's just as crazy about barbecue as I am. So of course we struck up a conversation, and turns out it was Sean, and he was also from Kansas City and loved barbecue. And we ended up sharing a meal together with his friend, and there was another guy from Canada as well. It was great because we were able to order pretty much the entire menu, everything that was available that day, and sat down, and then Sean and I just kept in touch after that. And
we also serendipitously ran into each other at Valentina's as well.
Oh yeah.
The very next day.
Wow.
The next day. So
yeah, that's right.
Those are 2 solid restaurants,
right? I haven't been to my family. We used to live. I didn't live in Amarillo, but my family's from there, so we used to go there a lot and get a lot. There was a lot of food, but man, I'd never been down there, and I wanted to go so bad. So, what niche did you guys looking to fill when this whole smoke sheet come out? What are you guys like? We need this because why?
Sean, I'll let you take that.
Yeah. So I had this idea that I really interested in barbecue. I enjoy reading about it, but where can I read about everything that's going on across the country? Because don't get me wrong, like Daniel Vaughn, Texas Monthly, does a great job of covering Texas. Don't get me his coverage of Texas has done, so much work educating people and teaching people about the barbecue scene in Texas. I mean, guys like him and JC Reed. And you've got great coverage of like Carolina barbecue from a guy like Robert Moss, and you can really dig into the history and understand it. But I was like, well, who's covering kind of this from a national angle? Who's kind of trying to keep tabs on all the cool things that are going on? And I was like, what if you had a newsletter where you could kind of learn a little bit about everything going on in barbecue, whether that was all the cool barbecue events whether that was all the most interesting barbecue news, and then original editorial that would feature people from across the barbecue spectrum, with kind of an understanding that there's amazing barbecue that you can find in all corners of the U.S. You can find barbecue internationally now. Right? Like there's this interesting thing in how the interest in barbecue is exploding, but where can I read about what's happening nationally? Well, we're like, why don't we create this? Why don't we make something where we can share what we're reading about and share the most interesting insights into barbecue with a broader audience? And so that's kind of where the idea came from. And we got together and just kind of hashed out what we thought belonged in the smoke sheet. And now we've been doing it for 2 years.
Dang, that's awesome. And and just, you guys, if you haven't had a chance to look over the smoke sheet, just go to the smoke sheet. Just Google it. I mean, I'm sure smokesheet.com, right? It's bbqnewsletter.com. And just go read it, because it's not long. There's a lot of things that you guys can bust out really quickly, but it also like talks about all the things you're missing. I mean, now listen, guys, we're not the only barbecue podcast. I know that you're out there listening thinking that we are. We're not. All right. And every week you guys feature someone that, you know, like for example, this week, I think it's Kevin's Joints is on there. You talked about Meathead's origin story on Greg Rempe's show, the Barbecue Central show, stuff like that. But then reading, like what to read, and then you have cool ones like this one. If I'm going to look it up right now, I think it's about history of politics and barbecue. Yeah, with Robert
Moss.
Robert Moss. Thank you. Yeah, like, we've had him on the show, so we've had him on the show. I read his book. It's amazing. So. It's just a cool little jaunt, you know, that you guys can just, I literally wake up, I get it, and I read it over coffee just on my phone, just kind of flip through it. I'm like, oh, cool. And click on a link and, I'm going to listen to that podcast today. I'm going to read this. So if you haven't done it yet, do it now. Go there, just sign up for the newsletter. It's super fun. You guys aren't blowing everyone up. It's just, here it comes, you know, then it's in your mailbox and that's it.
The only thing you could accuse of blowing you up is that if you forget to read it, we might send you an additional newsletter a few days later, just in case you missed it. So that's the only thing you could say we're blowing you up. But that's only 2 potential in your inbox every week. So on Wednesday morning is when we send it, and we'll send it to you one more time just in case you didn't get a chance to see it.
So let's just talk about the stuff that, you know, you guys have been around. You guys came from Kansas City, which I'm a huge fan of. Isn't there like four? There's like as many barbecue joints in Kansas City as there are Mormon churches in Utah, I think. And so that's a lot. Yeah, that's a metric fuck ton. And you know, Q39 sticks out to me as one of my favorite places I've ever been to. But I just want to talk about Texas for a second, because I've never been there. A lot of people, you know, want to go. It is like Snow's, are Franklin's, are those places, are they as real as it is? Like that is the best barbecue, or is it worth going to Austin and Lockhart and all those places to check these places out?
Absolutely it is. Yeah. If you like barbecue, you got to get down there just because of the culture. I mean, like it's just ingrained in the people in Texas that barbecue is a big deal. And, you know, as much as, a proud Kansas Cityan as I am, and we like to say Kansas City is the barbecue capital and everything. I mean, it's just a different world down in Texas. That's the heart of barbecue down there, if you ask me. And as far as the restaurants, yeah, I mean, those restaurants, Snow's and Franklin and a lot of those other restaurants, they are every bit as good as they are touted to be. You know, is the food the best ever? Is it going to blow you away? Maybe not. I think for Snow's, a lot of the appeal of Snow's is the atmosphere. I mean, you're literally there at 7, 8 in the morning, drinking beer with a bunch of strangers, waiting to have this, you know, food cooked by an 85-year-old pitmaster. And it's all about like the community and the experience almost more than it is about the food. I think if it was just about food, it kind of like, there's a lot of different kinds of good food, but barbecue is really about the community and the people.
Nice. And Kansas City, I've been, like I said, that place is awesome. So it's interesting for me to have you say that, because Kansas City is known for sauce, everything. You know, I think you guys have a sauce for your Cheerios, and then you head down to Texas, which is just like salt and pepper, bro. Deal with it. Like, sauce, what? You know,
Right.
so, but it's different everywhere. So, I mean, but I find, like, especially with places popping up like Little Miss in Arizona, you know, they're taking on the Texas thing. I think it's like, it's becoming less regional these days, with so many places popping up, especially like in New York City. You know, you can go up there and go to Blue Smoke and all sorts of random places that do. I think, if I remember correctly, he does very similar turkey than as Franklin does. So do you guys see a lot more of that kind of popping up? It's not as region. It's not like, okay, it's just Texas. It's kind of everywhere now.
I would say that you're going to see, I think, Texas's influence on a lot of barbecue around the country. But when it comes to regionality, I think that you still do find interesting examples of regionality at all of these joints, or a lot of these joints. You know, in New York, you go to Hometown Barbecue, you can have some Jamaican jerk ribs that are influenced by the Jamaican food in the neighborhood. You know, you can go to even, I think, Little Miss barbecue in Arizona. I think has got a few menu items that are very specifically influenced by the region. You could, I mean, I don't know. I just think that you're still, like, regionality. You're right in a way that Texas has really influenced and pushed on a lot of barbecue around the country. But I don't know, the menu items that you might find at your local joint up in, you know, Washington or in Portland, or you go down to Florida, you're going to see there are a lot of interesting variations on those menus.
Mm-hmm. Is there the perfect restaurant out there for, like, me? I want Texas brisket, Carolina pork, Kansas City ribs, you know, like,
yes, it's called it's called
Sounds
a
like
buffet.
Famous Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, good barbecue, guys. Come on.
It's probably, no, because it's probably like a chain barbecue joint that is trying their best to emulate a few of those things, but then unfortunately, a lot of times none of those turn out super well. So, you know, it's unfortunate, but I think that you're usually not going to find that kind of a menu, and all of them are going to be great.
So you have
that's kind of how I feel, that, like, those places that have really blown my socks off have been the places like Skylight Inn that have, like, 3 items on the menu, and we serve this kind of whole hog, and that's it. We don't have brisket and ribs and all that other stuff. And those are the places that are just like, whoa, this is just phenomenal, because they focus all their attention on what they do best. And it turns out to be amazing. So
when you go into a joint,
go ahead.
be honest. Okay. How harshly do you judge these folks? Have you ever come out and just been like, how do you do it? Like, this place sucks, I'm going to blow them up, because you have to do your civic duty. You can't allow people to go eat that. How do you go about that when you go into a place that just sucks?
I feel like Ryan has been to more places that have just been downright terrible. I know I've been to a few. I'll just say I normally just wouldn't post about them or promote them necessarily if it was so bad that I just, you know, I couldn't even recommend anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a kindness to them to just not be posting about them versus posting and being like, this is complete garbage, don't go there. Right. Because then that, in a way, then you are harming a business rather than, you know, like, you're actively trying to harm a business. And I don't want to be in that position. I don't want to be in the guy. We're in tough times already.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be a guy completely slamming the hell out of a place because their brisket was really bad. And also, there's off days. I mean, I've been to joint and I've been there one time, and then 2 months later I went back and it was way better. Like, it's happened to me. So it could be an off day. I don't know. Ryan, I remember Ryan told me a story once. Now, he's not going to mention the name probably, but he did tell me, like, it was the worst thing he's ever eaten. But please tell me, what was it? Or give me the story, because it's so good.
Yeah, there was one spot that, I mean, just everything.
Kansas City area. Kansas City area.
I was actually doing a project for Visit KC. They came up with a barbecue app. So it was an app specifically for visitors to be able to find the best barbecue and everything. And they had asked me to take pictures at various places. And there was one spot, and when I drove up, I knew, I was like, this place is not going to be good. But I thought, hey, I'm getting paid to go take photos or whatever. I might as well hit it, So I did. And like, just all the warning signs were there from the moment I drove up to when I walked in to when I ordered. I mean, everything was bad. And it came out just 10 times worse than my worst nightmare. I was like, what is this? This isn't even like edible food. It was crazy. And so, but I still kind of felt bad. So I literally I took a couple of bites, just choked them down. And I'm like, and of course I ordered a huge freaking platter. Like I was like, give me the works or whatever. And they brought out a huge platter just loaded with meat and stuff. And I took 2 bites and then I walked up sheepishly and asked for a to-go box and put it all in the to-go box and left. And even walking out, there was like shady stuff going on in the parking lot, and like the food stunk up my car and everything. I mean, it was just miserable. And I could not, I don't think I went online and blew them up, but I definitely just could not recommend that to anybody ever. And eventually, somebody was like, okay, you got to tell us what place is this so we can avoid it. And I think I said, what it was or whatever, but mostly places try really hard to do a good job, and they might have an off day. And I try to focus on the positive if I can. And sometimes there are places where you go and you really love the people, the staff or whatever, and the food's just not that great. And you just want to love it, but you just don't. You got to just focus on, the people and their story or the atmosphere or whatever positive aspects that you can a lot of times, especially nowadays when it's just rough for everybody out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially those who aren't, it's funny. So everyone out there, just so you know, if you own a restaurant, you see Sean and Ryan and you don't see anything else.
Yeah. My question is,
you might want to take a little introspection walk.
Is that establishment's doors still open? I'm just curious.
Oh yeah, they've been around forever, and they have multiple. They have a couple of locations, and I'm like, how did this place ever stay in business? But of course, I was like, went there at lunchtime, and it was only me and one other table of really strange people. I was like, well, no wonder, But I don't know how they stay in business, but they do.
Isn't that interesting? I don't know. That's just interesting. It's barbecue.
It could just be like a tax thing. It's only there because they lose money on it, and that's
exactly. I even asked somebody. I asked my friend from KC. I'm like, is this some sort of front for some other illegal operation? Because I have no idea how they stay in business as a restaurant.
You're like, is his last name Italian? He's dressed in suits. But it's interesting is barbecue is probably one of those few restaurant types where, man, bad days are real. They happen all the time. Right? You can go, consistency is key in any restaurant. You go to McDonald's in Italy, you taste, it doesn't actually. You know that, Sean. I know you just got they're back from there too. It doesn't taste the same, but it should taste the same everywhere you go, and that's with restaurants all over the place. But barbecue's different that way. We have places here I've actually gone to, just like you guys said. And I'm like, this is, and then when people want to go back, I'm like, nah. So I go back anyway and I eat. I'm like, damn, this is really good. Man, barbecue, I think I'm trying to think of anything else that's similar to that.
I don't think so, because you have the price that drives that too. When you're in the restaurant, you had the opportunity to buy a certain kind of brisket, but then the company went another route with a different brisket and the quality wasn't the same. It changed week by week.
But a brisket, every animal's different. You don't know, you cook it the same way. It just comes out different
every time.
Interesting. But it's
I was thinking about the fact that you've got so much time that goes into it. And if something goes wrong in that 16-hour brisket smoke, and it just doesn't turn out great, but it's okay, it's good enough to get you there. But you're just one little mistake got you there, And I just think about, you think about like a fancy, like fine dining meal or whatever, or fast food or whatever. But like a lot of this stuff comes together so quickly. So, you screw something up. Well, we'll go make it again. Tell them this is terrible, whatever, something happened. We'll get you a new one. Well, you can't do that with barbecue as easily as you can with, pasta.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, Hell's Kitchen would be a pretty lame show if it was barbecue.
Right? You'd be like, it's done.
Make it. Ah, crap. Never mind. We're serving this.
Speaking of like flavor profiles and everything, I've never traveled the country and checked out different barbecue joints, but as you travel throughout the year, can you taste the difference of the food smoke flavor wise? Because in the wintertime, you'll get more smoke on the meat because you're trying to keep those pits up to temp. In the summertime, it goes a little bit quicker, but can you taste that throughout the seasons as you travel?
I don't think that's a good question. I don't think I've ever really noticed that, but I often go to so many, places, and I just will hit them once in a year, so I guess what I ought to do, and now is the perfect time to do that, is just to hit the same place over and over throughout the year and see how it changes. But I have never really noticed like huge differences that the smoke flavor or anything like that. And a lot of that is, the places are really, they've got their processes dialed in, and they're going for consistency. So I haven't noticed that really.
I think the thing that I've noticed is that different woods are being used throughout the country, and some of those will be a much like a lighter smoke flavor, and some of those will be a little heavier, a little denser. And you'll, kind of the wood that you're using is going to get that. So up here in the Northeast, it's cherry wood, it's apple wood. You don't see like a lot of oak. Like I know down in Texas, post oak is the thing. And it just really depends, I think, where you're at, what's available, and the flavor profile is going to change. Sometimes it's subtle and sometimes it's pronounced.
Mm-hmm. It's just because I see that in my cooks throughout the year. I could cook the same thing repetitively, and then winter comes along and it just seems like I'm burning more fuel. The fire's fighting a little harder, and I get a stronger smoke flavor.
Maybe, but I don't know.
That can just be you're rolling with different temperatures, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It just fluctuates a little bit more.
A little more. Trying to get consistency there is going to be so important, especially in the very cold months, getting that consistent burn going. So I would agree that it's going to taste a little bit different for sure.
So Ryan, let's start with you, and you can jump in anytime, Sean. When you walk into a place, traditionally you look at Snow's, right? They cook on, there's a certain kind of cooker they use, Franklin's, Big Bob Gibson's, all these places are just different. Do you find that when you walk into someone and they're using like an old hickory, are you kind of like, or do you even care? Does that even factor into your thinking before you walk into a place?
It shouldn't. But I think Daniel Vaughn said it best. You critique the food, not the process or not the tool to get you there. It shouldn't, but of course I'm going to, in the back of my head, I'm sure I go to Snow's and I'm like expecting that it's going to be that much better, or expecting that Franklin or any place that's cooking with real wood in a traditional manner, I'm sure I kind of think, that this is a little bit better than a place with a Southern Pride or Old Hickory. But the fact of the matter is, I wonder, it'd be really interesting to do that blindly, and have, if I could do that where I had I could sit down and someone bring me out trays of barbecue from all over the country, and some are done on gas assist pits. Could I really tell, or not? I think you could obviously tell those, offset pits that are using real wood, that where the smoke is really heavy. But, for some places, I would imagine even those gas assist pits are going to give you some good smoke flavors that you would never guess otherwise. In fact, there was a place down in Texas that I was like, man, I love the smoke flavor on this. And the guy smiled and it was like, yep, that's an Old Hickory. And I'm like, what? I couldn't believe it. So, yep.
You probably see a lot of that up there in New York, right, Sean? Do you have any people that are using, more traditional offsets or something like that? Or is it kind of all gas assist for the most part?
We are seeing, I would say, at least half that I know of are using gas assist. But if the thing is like, think about it from a perspective of somebody who really knows how to use the tool that they have. So if they're within this constraint and they've learned how to do this in such a way to, get a more pronounced smoke flavor, then they are getting the end result and thing they want out of it. They've figured, through some kind of magic, they've figured out how to produce what they want to produce. And then we do have a few restaurants, like Hometown, Juicy Lucy Barbecue in Staten Island, there's a new version of John Brown Smokehouse in Long Island City, Queens. These are the kinds of places that actually do have full blown pits that are using real wood, no gas, and really just bring out incredible flavors. So you kind of find both. You find both, and you'd be surprised by how good those Old Hickories can do it, as long as they really know what they are doing. So just like Ryan's experience, I've experienced it as well. Unfortunately, in New York, you think about the space constraints and the environmental constraints, because New York City has stronger environmental protections than a lot of other cities do. So in terms of how much smoke you can produce and how you have to deal with it, so like the city's a real pain in the ass. But ultimately, if you want to do your restaurant, you follow these regulations, you do this thing, and you can have yourself a nice restaurant.
That's right. So can you guys walk into a barbecue restaurant and be like, man, this is going to be good? Because I can do it in a taco spot. I'd be like, this taco place is going to be off the chain, just by telling what they have on the table and just people's reactions.
Like specials and free drinks. And
I'm talking
get one.
Like there's a taco spot here in Salt Lake that I don't trust taking the average person to, because they'd be like, this place is disgusting, but the tacos are just amazing. But can you go into a barbecue restaurant and be like, this is going to be good just by the atmosphere?
I wish. That'd make my life really easy. I've seen lots of articles and stuff like that where people have written all these rules about, if you see a wood pile and you see this and that, and it's like, yeah, that'd be great if that were true, but there's no rules like that to where it's like, this will be good because of this reason or whatever. I haven't really found that yet. I mean, there's been places where I've been like, yeah, this place is going to be amazing, and then it's not. And then there's places that are in a strip mall, but it's like, holy smokes, this is really great barbecue, no atmosphere whatsoever, but the food is really, really great. So I've seen just everything. Just seen it all almost.
Yeah, it was like that in New Orleans. It was just, you never knew. Like, the most trashy place ever, and it's the best po' boy I've ever had. I don't even remember the name. I don't think I had it on the front door. It has, cliche as that is, but it's true. It's just like you're walking down the street and like pop in somewhere. I'm like, oh, try it out. I'm like, damn, that was good. I thought I was going to, I probably am like, I can no longer contract diseases anymore, but that was really good.
Just, to me, I just feel like hole in the wall joints always have better food. Yeah. Personally.
Yeah, I disagree. I still scare them. They still scare me.
They still scare you.
This conversation reminds me of Payne's in Memphis, which ended up being basically our favorite of our Memphis trip. And Payne's is so no frills, almost like they don't care who you are kind of thing. Like, we walked in, we're asking them questions, and we're obviously like super interested in barbecue, and they're like, very nice, very pleasant. Here's your food, whatever, there's some like restaurants where they hear, oh, you're a barbecue guy, so we're going to like treat you extra nice and pretend like we're your best friend and whatever. And sometimes that can come off kind of fake, right? You're just like, you're being a little too much. And they're the complete opposite. So relaxed, so no frills. The restaurant has been there forever, but then the food itself is the star of the show, and it's so good. And you're like, wow, like, I'm so impressed by this food. And, it's just because you've been doing this for like 50 years. Mm-hmm. Your family's been doing this forever. and you've just really got this craft down to where your food is so good. But then there was like hardly that many people in the restaurant, you know, where it was so surprising, you know, we were just like, this is the kind of place that should be full, you know?
Yeah. And it had no real atmosphere. I mean, that was their atmosphere, that they had no decorations on the walls. They had like lawn furniture almost, like as the chairs and tables. It looked like it was an old garage or something at one point, and they just weren't doing anything except for producing really great barbecue. That's like all they did. They didn't have any atmosphere or exceptional customer service or anything like that. It was just great food. So, well,
and the food was exceptional quality, and the price was very low. Like it was incredibly affordable. And you think about, you know, the money is all, you know, not going into the restaurant and decorations and fancy cocktails and all this other stuff. No, it's just really good food. And that's the focus of it.
Man, that's a rarity, Rusty. Get really good food for cheap price. Normally around here, it's like really expensive for not quality barbecue.
Well, we're coming up in the world. Us Utah guys, okay? We're getting a lot fancier now. Back then, we're taking our dates to Sizzler, you know. It's like, what's up?
And I added the salad bar on for you.
That's right, baby. That's all you can drink Diet Cokes right there. And now we have a lot more options in Utah. It's been really nice because of the growth. You know, long ago. Wait, it's been a long time since the days of Footloose. You know, which by the way is filmed where I grew up.
Every time.
It's important. That's my culture. All right.
Every time
you're a hero when it's 5-1. You know, that's badass. All right, so let's talk about okay. So we're gonna make a list of places to eat before you die. What are those places for you guys? Give me a couple.
Oh, wow. That's a great.
Because I need this one because I'm actually literally making a list called places to eat before I die. And I think you guys probably know more than most.
It doesn't have to be in any order, but.
Well, Payne's for Memphis. If I had to go to one place in Memphis, it'd be Payne's. It was so cool. For Kansas City, gosh, what would it be?
There's a lot in Kansas. I mean, there's a lot in Kansas City.
I guess,
but I think you got to go to the original, the Joe's and the gas station.
Joe's gas station,
it's so classic. And if you don't get yourself, you know, the sandwich, you don't get a Z-Man or a Rocket Pig, then you're going to have a bad day. You need to get those sandwiches, and then your day is going to be 10 times better.
Unless your mild salsa is too spicy for you like me, then don't get the Rocket Pig.
No. It's not that spicy. You'll love it. Okay. So I would
Skylight Inn. Jeez. Yeah. I mean, Skylight Inn. Awesome.
I want to go Skylight. I just read his book not too long ago, and man, that's one of my top places I want to go. So I'm glad you guys said that one, because that's one I was going to make an effort to get to.
It is an effort to get there. I will tell you.
Is it?
I mean, I was in Raleigh, and I think it was like an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe more to get there. And then the first time I went, it was sold out. So I had to get in the car and drive all the way back.
Oh, no.
And I was like, I'm not driving all the way from Nebraska to North Carolina and not getting Skylight Inn. So I made that drive the next day before they had sold out, just so I could go. And it was every bit as awesome as I thought it would be. So I was glad I did.
So
I would throw in for locally. I would do Hometown Barbecue and John Brown Barbecue here in New York, in the New York area. Have to make sure you hit those up.
Okay, what about Texas? I mean, obviously Snows, right?
We've got so many. I mean, Snows, Franklin.
For the atmosphere alone, Louis Miller, that place that was the first spot I hit in Texas, and it's such a cool place.
So those are pretty Valentina's. Those are pretty staples. What are the places you were surprised by that may not be in these normal towns that we think of as barbecue capitals? What's somewhere like along the beaten path? Maybe you're just like, damn, that place in middle of Ely, Nevada was delicious. You know.
It's a very good question. I'm trying to think about, especially up in my neck of the woods, places that I've been to that really surprised me. I would go to Red, White, and Q in Kearney, New Jersey, which is outstanding, great people, and everything on the menu is outstanding. And I know that New Jersey is not like a place where people are thinking of, you know, the best barbecue, but make sure you go there. All right, Ryan, I feel like
there's
Ryan
a lot of places in the South, you know, like Ubon's in Yazoo City, Mississippi. I mean, they're a famous place, but like there's nothing really there except for that restaurant. And Dreamland in Alabama, or Saws in Alabama, places like that it's like, you know, it's just some really high quality barbecue in some of those places.
Yeah, in New Jersey they don't have barbecue, but apparently there's a festival there called Salt City Barbecue, which is my team name. I'm trying to get a freaking website, but they own everything.
Right.
They own all of it. So if you guys know it, Sean, if you're ever just I'm bored today, go mess with those people. Be like, yo, what's
all
up?
right.
Yeah.
Put some fear in them.
You know what comes to my head with New Jersey? It's always skeet ball, you know, with the show Dogma.
Skeet ball?
Yeah, skeet. Isn't it skeet?
I don't know. I didn't watch that show.
Dogma. It comes back to me every time I think New Jersey. I'm like, oh, the pier.
Jersey. All right. So the smoke sheet, guys, where are we heading with that? What's the plan? You guys thinking, do you guys have any plans for that in the future, growing that in any way?
I think so. I think we definitely intend to grow it further. I'm not sure, like, I think we're using the end of this year to kind of think about what we want to do in 2021. You know, I think what really sucks about this year is obviously COVID really tamped down a lot of things that we might have wanted to do, whether it was expand event coverage, whether it was to, you know, just go to a lot more places that we were interested in going to, but it's really been tamped down a little bit. So I think we have to look forward to 2021 and hopefully kind of get back to, you know, getting on the road again and doing some fun stuff like that. But until then, until things are a little, you know, more, you know, normal-ish again, we have hopefully an opportunity to think about what we want for the smoke sheet in the future as well.
Nice. Like in a vlog, maybe you guys can do some little vlogging on the road. That would be cool.
Yeah,
I'd be down for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fun one. You know, I think trying to, you know, we always want to encourage more people to get involved with the smoke sheet as well. So, you know, if anyone out there is, you know, has done any barbecue writing or wants to do some barbecue writing, hit us up, because we're also looking, you know, look for interesting perspectives and interesting voices, maybe people that haven't been able to have their hand in writing about barbecue or, you know, or maybe they want to do a video about barbecue, who knows? And just want a platform for that. You know, we're definitely want to talk to them, because I think we want to get more people involved and definitely get more representation. You know, I mean, we believe that barbecue is kind of being experienced by everybody. I mean, just you look down every culture and there's some representation of barbecue, and want to bring all those interesting voices in.
Heck yeah. Well, you guys need to come out here to Utah eventually. You got to come out here where the soda flows everywhere. Everything's sweet.
Where the ranch dressing goes on everything.
Yeah.
And you have one of the really great things. I mean, in terms of like the silver lining of this whole pandemic and this year and not being able to travel and everything, it has been good for the smoke sheet in that we have been able to kind of focus on different things. I've gotten to do a lot more cooking in the backyard and gotten to be a lot more proficient cook, and got a new offset smoker and use it all the time, and gained a new appreciation for what it takes to really be a pit master and create high quality food every day. And at the same time, we've also been able to bring in some new voices this year. We've had lots of different guest authors for the smoke sheet. So it's been really good in that way, that it's kind of, it wasn't necessarily what we were expecting to accomplish this year, but we made the best of kind of a challenging year for sure.
Yeah, man. Those freaking burnt end sandwich you made looked so stupid good.
Oh, if you guys don't mind, I got to talk about that.
Please.
Yes.
Man,
It was like the best post ever because it looks so good. And you're wearing a Clash shirt. And I, I mean, I've told you before, I'm a huge fan of the Clash. And in barbecue, you don't see a lot of people like that rolling around in punk rock t-shirts, So
yeah,
I was like, that's
I'm
the guy.
I'm a punk rock guy. So
yeah, man, Ryan's my spirit animal. Yeah. Tell us about the sandwich because it looked amazing.
So it was really interesting. This really awesome restaurant called Block 16 here in Omaha reached out to me. They saw me cooking stuff in the backyard on Instagram and everything, and they had featured some barbecue or smoked meat thing. And I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have known that you guys were doing that. And they said, well, why don't you cook some barbecue for us and we'll feature it and we can collaborate. I'm like, okay. So I went down there to talk to them and they kind of like signed on the dotted line immediately. And then as they were talking to me, I think they realized, wait, this guy is just like a normal barbecue guy. He's not like a professional chef or anybody with real credentials. I'm sure they were like, maybe we ought to rethink this. But nonetheless, I was like, I think we could do pork belly burnt ends. And they're like, oh yeah, we could do a banh mi Vietnamese sandwich, with the burnt ends. And I was like, perfect. So my original intent was just to do this in my backyard on my stick burner. And as I was talking to them, I'm like, holy smokes, like the quantity of food that I need to produce for this is way more than I can just do in my backyard. Not to mention that's not exactly legal. So I started talking to our local barbecue store here, and they're like, well, why don't you just cook it here? We have a legitimate kitchen. You can use our smoker and everything. We can produce everything that you'll ever want. So when we were talking about smokers earlier, that was really, really interesting to me in that I'm always like, I've never really used a pellet smoker at all. And I used an offset in my backyard and everything. But for the amount of food that I had to do, I needed to use a commercial smoker. So we used a Cook Shack, Fast Eddie's Cook Shack. And so the bellies that I got from Block 16 were massive. I cubed them all up and seasoned them, and they wouldn't even fit on this commercial smoker. Like we had to drag out a Green Mountain Grills and to do the rest of them. It snowed for the first time in Nebraska for the first time of the season. So like everything was against me. It was just like, oh man, one thing after another. But somehow the cook just all came together. I got the burnt ends down to the restaurant, right on time. We took photos and they assembled this awesome banh mi sandwich, and it was just phenomenal. And it sold out in 20 minutes. I mean, it was like 30 pounds of burnt ends and it was gone like that. I was like, and I thought, well, with the snow, nobody's going to show up, but they all did. And I had friends come down there at like 11:21 and they're like, what? It's all out. What do you mean? Like, why didn't you cook more? And I'm like, dude, I filled a smoker and had to get another smoker just to cook this. So it was an interesting experience and gave me a lot, just a new respect. I already respect Pitmasters, but it gave me a totally new perspective on the whole thing. And all I was doing was cooking one meat, one time. I just can't imagine like getting up at 2 a.m. in the middle of a snowstorm every day and cooking food and cooking all sorts of different kinds of food. But it was a fantastic experience. And since then, a couple other places have already reached out. They're like, oh, we got to collaborate. Let's do it. So cool. I'm like, okay, maybe this will be a thing,
It looks great. If you guys don't know, go to the Barbecue Tourist on Instagram and check it out. Great. It looked amazing. I see a lot of food because I'm immersed myself in it, but that one, I was like, whoa, stop for a second. Damn.
Read all the captions and everything, hashtags, the whole time.
I think I saw it 3 times, stopped all 3 times. Like, all right. It
was good. It was super good. They gave me the first sandwich and it tasted great. I like cleaned the whole plate. I mean, it was phenomenal.
It's a good idea. It's just so simple. I don't think I've ever seen it before. So that's awesome, man.
Yeah. I wish they do it all the time. So
maybe I'll steal it. I didn't say that.
Nope.
Call it the barbecue tourist. How about that?
There you go. I'll call it there you go. I'll steal it. I'll throw it on the menu and call it the barbecue tourist.
Boom.
I dig it.
Done.
But then you have to come eat it. And I hope you read a review, because if you don't,
right.
then I know what happened.
Both of you guys just come out and give it a solid review.
Or just say that you did.
I'm so jealous that I didn't get to have this. But one of these days I'll go out to Omaha and I'll have Ryan make me one.
Dude, it looked awesome.
The closest I've had is a lamb belly banh mi from Hometown Barbecue here. And that is a very interesting sandwich. I mean, lamb belly, barbecued lamb belly is already interesting in itself. Yeah. But then on a banh mi, wonderful flavors.
Sounds delicious.
Mm-hmm. Dang, I never eat. We do these at 6 o'clock our time a lot of the times, and I never eat. And so I'm always hungry when we talk about these when I leave. And I'm like, damn.
It sounds like we need to go, oh my, and get us a sandwich.
Yeah, let's just run out. Where is it?
It's Omaha. No.
Let's just go to Omaha real fast. Yeah. We hop in the car and just
we'll do a quick overnighter.
Head out. Hey, man. Anyway, well, cool, guys. Tell us where we can find you guys on social medias, websites, whatever you guys want to throw out there and promote to the people.
So yeah, you can find me, Barbecue Tourist, at BBQ Tourist on Instagram, BBQ Tourist on Facebook and Twitter, and then bbqtourist.com.
Yeah, and mine is nycbbq.com. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook, NYCBBQ, and on Twitter is New York BBQ. But of course, the Smoke Sheet, make sure you check that out. It's bbqnewsletter.com, and we're at the Smoke Sheet on all the other platforms.
And you can go look at archives. I highly recommend going back and reading a few of the articles and check out some of the stuff. But if you guys are into barbecue, obviously listen to this podcast. This is something you need to have in your tool bucket.
Yeah. Yes.
Tool shed?
Not a shed.
Toolbox.
Toolbox.
There you go.
I love it.
There you go. Boom.
Who would have thought to put tools in a box?
I have a barbecue
you can put
toolbox.
stuff. Yeah. So putting that into your weekly routine is really nice. You get to see a lot of different stuff that you might not know of. I know I've actually heard of a lot of
recipes.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big fan of Robert Moss, even though I can't get his name right. And you guys work with him a lot. So I love the history parts of it and stuff like that. So there's a lot in there for everyone. So if you guys aren't, subscribe, jump on there and do it now. And you'll thank me. You will. I promise. If we see each other down the road. But guys, we really do appreciate you coming on. We've wanted to get you on for a minute, and I'm glad we made it work. Love what you guys are doing individually and together. And we hope you guys keep up the good work, because you guys are doing a lot for barbecue, a lot for us, a lot for the people out there. And we appreciate you and what you're doing for barbecue. And keep up the good work, guys. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.